The gospel tells us how to walk with Jesus, how to grow spiritually, and to learn about his freedom, his gifts, his presence. When we start to read the New Testament, we start with Matthew, the first gospel. And in the beginning, they're talking about the ancestry of Jesus and his birth, which describes that Jesus came from God and not from man. In other words, there was something in Jesus which was always recognized as unusual, as not from this world, from the other world, where we came from. And in the second chapter, they already tell us a story about what we can do about it. There are three people coming, three kings or three magicians coming from the east, from Persia, and they followed a star coming from the east to the west in order to find Jesus, the newborn king of the Jews. And nowadays they say there was a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, Saturn being the star of Israel, and Jupiter the star of kingship, of, yeah. So there is a king of the Jews born. And what we learn is from this story is that there is a light in us. But we see in the outside world, the stars are just reflections of the light inside. And we have to find this star in us in order to find Jesus, to follow Jesus from the east to the west, to go with the flow of time, of the stars, of the sun, and walk the way of our lives. And the next story already explained in which direction this walking, this direction should occur. So how do we find inner light? We need to cultivate stillness first and cultivate consciousness, awareness, because there is something in us which is always aware of the things we see, we hear, even we think. And this is the part of our mind which we should look for and cultivate. So to be there, stay there for a moment, as long as you want to, and find your own awareness. And this is already as close to the light you can come, because consciousness, awareness is light. It's described as light. And the next story is still in the second chapter, how the family, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus, ran away from Herodes to Egypt. And Egypt was, in the Old Testament, a place which symbolized this world, the world of space-time, in which we are trapped in slavery. And the people of Israel were told that when they go out of Egypt, they have to trust God totally. They can only live by manna, by bread falling from the sky. And they cannot take it for the next day. They just have to wait every morning that this bread is coming again. Only on Friday morning, they got 2 shots of the bread, because the Shabbat, they should not work on Shabbat. So they learned to trust God totally, and they went over the Jordan to the promised land. And then the story unfolds that they have a good life when they trust God, but when they have kings who depend on their own power, these kings are washed away, are invaded by alien armies. And this process happens again and again. So it's always this crushing of outside forces into Israel, the destruction of Jerusalem, exile, whatever, slavery, and a new beginning when they follow a prophet. And by telling the story in the beginning of Matthew, Matthew wants to convince his Jewish readers that Jesus, in a way, is the new Moses, the Moshe, that he's the new guy leading people out of space-time, of the world of slavery, into the promised land. So he's coming back from Egypt and coming to Israel. And there he will start his ministry. And the ministry is what he will talk about in the Sermon on the Mount, is about freedom. And freedom, the only way to freedom is God dependency. There's everybody who did the 12-step program know what I'm talking about. People who were addicted to drugs, to relationships, to anything. they can do this program in the first step. They have to admit that they cannot free themselves depending on their own power. And they ask for help, and they give their lives to God. As Jesus said, into your hands I commend my spirit. This is basically the teaching of Jesus. It's not so much the teaching as many think until now, that Jesus was ascete and that he was rejecting the world and not eating much like John the Baptist. No. Jesus was someone who really enjoyed living here, drinking wine and doing many other things, and some of the things are probably not written in the gospel. So he was taking life totally in, but let life flow through him and give everything of himself to help others. And this is what he calls us to do too, to reach freedom by receive everything from God. And we're talking about abundance here, and give everything away every morning. And don't keep it in our shelters, and don't pile up things of this world, but live by the grace of God. This will be described in the next chapters. Thank you for listening.